Hello, Frizzle Fleet! By the statistics, by the numbers, sci-fromance is my favorite genre. That is sci-fi plus romance. I prefer the balance, like a good 50% sci-fi, 50% romance, and with minimal spice. Those are my preferences. So I am searching for a 5-star sci-fromance. Because sci-fromance is my highest rated genre on average, it should theoretically only take me 3 books before I get a 5-star. Looking at all the past stats of the sci-fromances I picked up, 1 in 3 have been 5 stars. Looking pretty good, right? So I am ready to embark on this mission to keep reading sci-fromance books until I get a 5-star. This video will not end without a 5-star at the end. The last time I attempted this video, it took 7 books, and judging by my stats with sci-fromance and the length of this video, which you can see, guess how many books it's going to take me this time. You can leave your guess in the comments if you want. So let's kick it off. Come on this journey with me as I read a lot of awesome and less awesome sci-fromance, and I'm going to tell you about all of them. I finished Cleon Moon. Now, this is book 5 in the Fallen Empire series. In my last reading sci-fromance until I got a 5-star, I read book 1. And in book 1, The Star Nomad, we are introduced to our protagonist, Elisa. And she was a fighter pilot in the rebellion against the Empire. And now, the rebellion's won, the Empire has been taken down, and she's stranded on the other side of the galaxy from where her homeworld is, so she's just trying to get back across the galaxy to get home to her young daughter. While traveling, she picks up a passenger who is a grumpy cyborg who was one of the fighters for the Empire in the war. So right from the get-go, they have this very strained relationship because they both really believe in the sides that they fought for. And they've got this dynamic that's like, if I ran into you during the war, I would try to kill you, but war's over. We can get along, right? But they still have this contentious and also flirtatious relationship, which is so fun. Great dynamic. And I loved that book. But I was a little unsatisfied with the romance because it was practically non-existent. There was just the teensiest bit of flirting between them. So I was very excited to continue on with the series to see how the relationship would develop. So I read book 2. And like no relationship development. And then we got to the very end of book 4 where their flirtationship had finally reached a boiling point and they had a little conversation in which she said, "Hey, I'm into you. Do you think that this relationship could work out?" And he said, "You know, I'm kind of into your personality as well, but you need to know that I'm like completely asexual, so if you're looking for that kind of relationship, it's not something that I'm willing to give you." And she went like, I'll have to think on that. So going into book 5, I am so excited for the continuation of this relationship development. I'm so excited to see how this book handles this interesting point of conflict between them of what they want in a relationship. And I think what I was most looking forward to and excited about was the prospect of this book exploring a asexual romantic relationship. Exploring the part of a relationship that's like emotional and caring for each other without the physical romantic parts of it. And for me, that's the part of a romance that I often see most underdeveloped, is the emotional caring for each other part of it. So like, I thought this book did a genius move, and I was really excited for this. Book 5, Cleon Moon. So, Cleon Moon, what do? They go to a moon that's named Cleon, and it's controlled by various mafias, and it's real dangerous, but they need to go there because they're searching for her lost daughter who was kidnapped by Sith Lords. It's a whole thing. It's been going on for a long time, and let's just talk about this plot for a second because I'm so bored with this plotline. And then she's just for books, going from one end of the galaxy to the next, looking for clues. And you know what we get in this book, book 5? Another clue that sends her to the other side of the galaxy on side quests, and it's so unsatisfying, and it feels like this book made no progress in any of the plots. Okay, now this book also made no progress in the romance plot! I can't even with how unsatisfying this book was. I DNF'd it at around 65% after our love interest guy fell into a coma. No, nothing else is gonna happen in this book. There's like action scenes in this book where they're fighting genetically engineered dinosaurs that have gotten out of control. Like the whole moon is like a failed Jurassic Park. And you know what the relationship development in this book was? It was just like 90% the girl staring at the guy and saying, "Wow, he's so hot. I really wish he wasn't asexual because I want to have sex with him so bad." And that was like all that was in her brain whenever she looked at him. And it was so annoying because there was no relationship development in this book. There was nothing that I was craving and hoping that this book would deliver on. And then she's like, But what if one day he isn't asexual? And maybe we should keep flirting just in case that day happens, you know? And just in case. And it's like, is that all she wants out of this relationship? Because like, I don't feel like that's a romance. At least not a good one. Because to me, a good romance needs to build that emotional relationship, and she has like zero interest in building it. So I'm giving Cleon Moon 2 stars, and I'm thinking, should I continue with this series? Because I really loved book 1, but my enjoyment of them has been going down since then. Feels like this book is going in the same circles book after book after book. And the first book, it was exciting and fun. Subsequent books have not been so good. And I could skip to the last book of the series and just read the conclusion, because surely they will make progress in it then. But I think I'm so annoyed and done with the series that I'm just going to DNF also the series. What a way to start this video, am I right? The 5-star is coming soon. I am so pumped and excited and hoping for it. So let's go to the next book of this video, and fingers crossed that it's a 5-star. I'm 51% into Fluency, and I had to check in with you midway through because I'm feeling really good about this one. So there are lots of reasons why I love the blend of sci-fi and romance genres, and I will direct you to my first sci-romance video if you want to hear all of those reasons. But one of the things that I didn't talk about in that video, but is very prevalent, especially here in Fluency, is that sci-romance is inherently feminist. Where historically, sci-fi has been a masculine genre. Something that struck me as I was reading Foundation a few years ago, one of the like foundational works of sci-fi, it has no female characters. And the one woman in the book is like a bratty wife to a mildly important character. So a lot of the roots of sci-fi are sexist. Are novels written by men for men that do not feature women in like any positive or 3D way. Now, the genre of sci-fi has come a long way since then, but a lot of the books are still written by men for men and not featuring very good female characters. Some of the earliest sci-romance works, like Ristori from the 1960s, was in direct reaction to all of this masculine sci-fi to try to like push back and install some feminine sci-fi in the cultural landscape, because romance is of course a very feminine genre written mostly by women for women. Now, the world I think would be better if men read more romance and women read more sci-fi. And that's the thing about sci-romance, is that it's pushing for that mixture. It's taking feminine things like romance and putting it into a masculine space and making room for feminine things in that space. So kind of every sci-fi book with a good romance in it is inherently feminist, but on top of that, a lot of sci-romance books also have intentional conversations about feminism and those themes. And I see that a lot here in Fluency, where we are following mainly Dr. Jane Halloway, and she is a linguist, and she has been recruited to go on this mission to a spaceship so she can help all the astronauts communicate with the aliens in a thrilling first contact scenario. And right from the get-go, she's bringing up points of how male-dominated her astronaut and engineer co-workers are, where it's hard for her to claim a leadership role when there's men that want to claim it instead. And on top of those conversations about feminism, it's also feminist in the way that it's positioning our protagonist as the expert in her field, as incredibly competent in an enormous amount of ways, while also giving her flaws and making her a well-rounded character, not just a Mary Sue. We are also following the perspective of a male engineer who is on this astronaut team, and he has quite a crush on her, but at first it was more like an objectifying crush, and then as they've gotten to know each other, he's grown in respect for her and is kind of becoming more feminist as he's associating with her and realizing that that's what she needs in a partner and the better way to be. Ugh, I love it. And the romance is relatively minimal so far. We've got like one kiss scene and a little bit of flirting, but mostly we're focused on this sci-fi plot, which is the group of astronauts have arrived at this seemingly abandoned spaceship in the asteroid belt. And it turns out it's not so abandoned after all, and it becomes a first contact story. And it's got everything that a first contact story needs, where you're not quite sure if you can trust the aliens, you're not quite sure if you're communicating with them right. There's all this culture shock and wondering, okay, now what is humanity's place in this galaxy? How far behind are we technologically of all of these aliens? And are they going to attack us? Should we attack them first? How do we defend ourselves? And breaking open all of those larger galaxy-spanning questions that I'm sure will get explored way more in the sequels of this book. And it's all very high stakes in both they might die on this spaceship any moment, but also because the way that they're communicating with these aliens is through some telepathy. And as Jane is communicating with these aliens, she's wondering what's real and if she can really trust what they're telling her, what they're making her feel, and it's very manipulative of her emotions. And I am loving everything about this book. I think it is crafting its sci-fi plot wonderfully, and I'm so hooked. I love all the characters. I love the budding romance we have. I love how it's feminist, and I went into this book with such lower expectations because I saw that its rating on Goodreads was a little lower than what I typically will pick up. But then halfway through this book, I'm wondering, like, this is so good. How and why does it have such a low rating? And then I look at the reviews, and most of the negative reviews are complaining about how much romance this book it has in it, about how it's not hard sci-fi enough because it's throwing in a romance, and generally just complaining in oftentimes sexist ways that this book is girly. And that makes it a bad sci-fi. That makes it inherently less good as a sci-fi because it has this strong romance side plot, because it's not as hard science fiction as you might be expecting. And I think part of that is a failure of the marketing of this book, where, like, if you read the blurb, it doesn't really hint at the romance much, and people might have been going in here with the wrong expectations. But I think what it shows is that the genre of sci-fi needs so much more diversifying in how masculine of a space it is, where we have this book trying to position itself as a sci-fi book, and then because it has romance, it's being shot down. And it's like, come on guys, obviously romance makes sci-fi better, am I right? I found this excellent interview with the author where she's talking about this exact, like, controversy of people rating her book low because there's a romance in it, where she says, like, hey guys, romance is part of storytelling, and lots of stories have it, and you guys need to adjust your expectations of what makes a good sci-fi, because I'm not adjusting myself. Feminism all the way. I love it. Predicted rating for this book, midway through, I'm gonna say 5 stars. We'll see. There's a lot of book left, and it could change, but I am optimistic. Hi, so where were we last? I was loving Fluency. Yeah, this video isn't ready to be over because not only was this book not a 5-star like I predicted at my midway check-in, it's not even something that I can say that I loved. Which is like, what? The first half of this book was so good, and then it crashed and burned in the second half so badly. And I need to rant to you about it. Partly unfairly, we're just complaining about the existence of romance in sci-fi as a genre, which, like, get out of town. Sci-fromance is the best subgenre of sci-fi, in my opinion. But people were also just complaining about the romance at large and the execution of the romance in this book, and I get it because I also hated the execution of the romance in this book. So, like, at halfway through, the couple has kissed, and I was shipping them, and I was on board. I thought it was a little weak in that we hadn't gotten much of the girl admiring the guy, but we had gotten plenty of the guy admiring the girl, but I assumed that would be fleshed out as we went forward. It was not. So, like, shortly after the kiss scene, we jump into a sex scene. And there is, like, no romantic relationship development between those two scenes. Like, the escalation is not only fast, it's like warp speed jumping through this book fast. And there are so many problems I have with not only the sex scene, but how the romance was in the rest of the book. And I have to give you some more context on how the sci-fi plot was progressing because it's all intertwined there. So we have the alien on the ship. He's telepathic, and he's telepathically communicating with Jane, our protagonist. So as the crew is exploring the ship and mishaps are happening, the telepathic voice of an alien somewhere else on the spaceship is helping them out. Before we jumped into the sex scene, it implied that not only was this alien starting to get into other crew members' heads, the alien was making everyone horny and manipulating their emotions, which is such a weird detail, especially when, like, after giving that detail, you jump right into a sex scene that seems very unprompted and not built up to, which immediately cut, like, any romance that was being maintained or created by this scene. Because all of a sudden, the consent and the intent behind this scene was incredibly dubious. Didn't like. The whole scene, yeah. It was revealed that it was not actually ever happening, but a vision given to our protagonist, Jane, by the telepathic alien. And I'm like, why was this scene in here? And our protagonist, Jane, reacts like, wow, I've been violated. This was like an invasion of my mind that I didn't want and that wasn't real, and I hate this. And she's angry at the alien for like half a chapter. And then it is swept under the rug and, like, never addressed again. What? So not only was this scene, like, gross, with dubious consent. It was straight up like non-consensual and didn't give anything to the romantic development of these two characters, which were kind of in the scene. Does anyone think that this scene is romantic or adds to the story in a positive way? Because I don't. And I would give this scene 1 star. We went from me feeling 5 stars about this book to I want to give this scene 1 star in like 10 minutes of reading. It was a very quick turnaround. And then the book never really recovered after that. The rest of the sci-fi plot is various like, oh no, we gotta survive on this ship, it's really dangerous, blah 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 kind of situations. And the romance never really got any more development. We got more of the guy being obsessed with the girl and like wanting to be with her forever, but like no reciprocation from the girl and no development of their romantic feelings. And the sci-fi plot also just kept introducing new weird directions it wanted to go in without ever like giving resolution to any of them. So the sci-fi plot felt very disorganized and unsatisfying. So first half of the book, I loved it, I was obsessed with it. Second half of the book, I was grossed out, disgusted, horrified, bored, and unsatisfied. I'd give the first half of this book like 5 stars, and I'd give the second half of this book like 1 star. Maybe 2 stars? I think I'm going to round them together to 3. So like, that was a disappointing read, and I see why it has a low average rating because the ending is entirely unsatisfying, and the romance is entirely unsatisfying, and yep. So much is left dangling for the sequel to address, but like I didn't like book 1 enough to like go on to read the sequel, so like dangle it will. So here's the star ratings so far for this video, and now let's hope that the next book is a 5 star. The next sci-fromance I picked up was Illuminae. Now this one is quite an interesting novel because it's told in a multimedia style where everything is text messages and action reports, transcriptions of interviews, things like that. And though I didn't dislike this style, I'm not sure if it really felt like it added anything to the story in the end. You know, like I think I would have just preferred it to be a normal book. The sci-fi plot of this book is on the far reaches of the galaxy. There is this isolated mining site which is attacked by a corporation for reasons which I don't know if were ever explained. But then all of the people living at the mining site have to evacuate. They get on some friendly spaceships which are going off, and the attacking spaceship starts chasing them, and then starts a many-month-long chase sequence where they're just kind of both going at full speed and hoping that one of them eventually catches the other or escapes. And then as this slow-motion chase sequence is ongoing, we get things on the ship breaking down, going wrong, and then it kind of becomes also a survival situation on the ship. And at the beginning of the book, I thought this plot was fine. By the middle, I was pretty hooked. Where the action of this book is so gripping and interesting, it's fast-paced, it's inventive, and has angles to the danger inside of this spaceship that I didn't expect, but I did love. And I loved that the middle of this book really went there and it felt so dangerous. And I feel like if I had a big complaint about this book, it would be that the end undercut a lot of that danger. The ending of this book is happier than it should be, you know? And I love happy endings, but it felt like this one, because there was such a tonal shift from the middle to the end, it undercut that awesome middle that it had been building. Now, the romance of this book, we are following a girl and a guy, and at the beginning of the book, they have just broken up. And I found it so interesting that this book really goes out of our way to show us the girl dumped the guy, and it was for a good reason because he is obnoxious. Like the beginning of this book, I couldn't stand him, and I'm sure that was on purpose because like, yeah, who is immature and doesn't respect his girlfriend's feelings. And to top it all off, is bad at communication. The book shows us a very negative side to this guy. Like, yeah, he deserved to be dumped. But then he is our love interest for the rest of the book. And then they start bonding, they work through what caused their breakup, they really reconnect through that. It felt like this book was relying on the fact that they had been a happy couple prior to the book to make us ship it. But it didn't actually build their relationship in the book. They were exchanging a lot of text messages, but a lot of it was about, how do we survive the situation? Quick, can you help me do this? How will we hack into this? Can you get on your spaceship and do this? A lot of their conversations were understandably action-oriented, not relationship development-oriented. And though there was a little bit of it, it was very small, and it wasn't enough to counteract my incredible dislike for our male main character from the beginning of the book. And I just find myself questioning the author's decision. Like, if they wanted to write this as a romantic subplot, why did they go out of their way so much at the beginning of the book to make him seem like a terrible romance interest? And then they didn't put in any of that effort throughout the book to redeem him as a better love interest. And I think a lot of that is my own expectations being faulty for this, where I heard on the internet that this was a sci-fromance, but on our sci-fi to romance scale, it's way on the sci-fi end, where there is a romance subplot, but it's not compelling or well done. But I did enjoy my time with a lot of Illuminae, especially the middle there, and even though I've got some gripes about the ending, and even though I've got some gripes about the romance, I'm gonna give Illuminae 4 stars. What can I say? I did enjoy my time with a lot of this book. At about 10% in, I was really considering doing a video check-in because it was going so well. I love the writing style of this book. How, you know how like some books, it feels like they hold your hand. The writing style is like excessively easy to understand. This was almost like the opposite of that, but not too overboard, where it took a lot of mental work to like parse what was happening, where they were using all of this sci-fi lingo, and I really felt like I was being respected as a reader in a way that I really loved. I felt like there was such care and attention being given to the world building details, but not in a way that it was too much, because there was also care and attention being given to the familial relationships that we're introduced to. So at the very beginning, I was going to do a check-in saying, I think this book is going to be 5 stars, and then I just ran out of time and didn't do it. And like, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because that would have been embarrassing, because let me tell you how this book actually turned out. So for the sci-fi plot, we are following a young man named Jethri. He is just becoming an adult, just getting out on his own. He has grown up on a spaceship that is trading goods across the galaxy, and now he needs to get an internship apprentice on a different trading ship. He manages to land an internship with the very reclusive, very prim and proper aliens, the Leandin. I was so intrigued by this culture shock moment where he isn't quite comfortable in their culture. It's very formal. And I was really excited to see how his relationships would develop between him and the crew of this new ship. But then it didn't. Like, there's so much emphasis on him learning all the different types of bows that they use and how to do them properly. Like pages on the bows. Not chapters and pages on him building relationships, making friends. No, it's just the bows. It's just him learning how to trade. His little bit of serious culture shock comes when he visits the homeworld of these people, and he has grown up on a spaceship all of his life. He has severe agoraphobia, can't do wide open spaces. Despite me being really intrigued and seeing how he would handle this and excited to see his character development that might come out of being on a planet, it felt like it was almost swept under the rug. Like, for a chapter or two, he was super scared of looking up at the sky. And then like a chapter later, he was just like spending hours outside with barely any mention of it. Just gone like that. It doesn't matter anymore. It just felt like day in the life. Oh look, now I'm learning about farming. Now I'm learning about bows. Now, let me tell you about the romance of this book. This book was literally tagged as romance. Guess how much romance was in this book? 0. 0 romance in this book! The sci-fi plot was boring and there was no romance. This is such a fail of a sci-fromance. And like at the very beginning I was loving this book, and then I realized that we weren't really gonna get much plot or anything exciting happening or anything compelling happening. And like, you know, 40% in, I was considering DNFing, but I was like, no, I'm sure the romance is about to start and things are gonna get better. So I just kept reading, kept thinking, no, the romance, I'm sure it's about to start. This book is gonna get better. I'm sure romance is about to start. It's gonna be great. So went from 5-star feelings prediction at the very beginning to, I think I'm gonna give this book 2 stars. So here's the star rating distribution of the books we read so far in this video. No 5 stars, and coming a little too close to 2 stars for my liking. And the way that our mode here is 2 stars, no, I do not like it. But at this moment, I've just started the next sci-fromance, and it's going well. In fact, I am going to tentatively predict that this is going to be our 5-star. Let me tell you about it. So this book is called Into the Churn. Our first point of view is this girl named Ezrin, and she's grown up on this planet that's only like a little terraformed, and she loves this planet. She really wants to work on the terraforming teams. She loves being outdoors in these terrible churning storms that are there, you know, just getting in her runs when she can squeeze them in, and she really has a passion for all of this. I find her really compelling because her family also has like these money troubles, and she's trying to balance her schooling and work and her dreams and her realities. And we're also following a guy living in this bunker on this planet with terrible weather. And he is part of the extreme sports team for the planet. Running, monster truck racing, fighting, triathlon kind of yearly competition that takes place. People come from all over the galaxy to compete on this planet. And he's on this planet's team, but they've been losing for many years. And now they've got a lot of budget cuts, they're doing tryouts, and he's trying out, and it looks like she's going to try out because she needs the money, even though she doesn't want the fame. But she does have the qualifications because she knows her way around the planet. And he's a little less driven. He doesn't quite have dreams. He's just kind of been in this holding pattern of being on the sports team that keeps losing. And he kind of wants to do more, but he doesn't know what he wants to do. I'm very excited for them to intersect. I love the writing style. It's very fast and easy, but not too easy where I feel like it is talking down to me, you know? So stay tuned for future check-ins. I've just started this one, and I'm feeling really good about it. Let's see. Book number 5 of the video, Into the Churn. I've now finished it. What did I think? I think it was incredibly readable. I was definitely zipping my way through this book. I love how the entire plot revolved around this deadly race, and our heroine and our hero had to be partners on this race, so they were always with each other, had each other's backs, really depending on each other throughout the entire experience, and that created some interesting forced proximity. I also love that these characters, or especially our heroine, Ezrin, really have things on the line connected to this race. Like, she's trying to get money to fund her terraforming dream and try to attract publicity for all of that. Like, she's very goal-oriented on the thing. I think it's a little weaker with our hero Foster, where he doesn't have quite as much motivation to actually be doing this deadly race. It's just kind of like, well, I did it before, so I guess I'm doing it this year too, but like, why? And I never quite got a handle on that. But this book does so well at really putting us in the setting of this planet that is covered in storms and them having to fight for their lives against the weather and against their fellow opponents. I loved all that. Now, the romance itself, I feel like it had this feeling of being too easy. Characters started out pretty much immediately admiring each other, progressing to attracted to each other, and like, I'm good with that. But then they went from that to actually coupling up. It felt like so quickly. And the coupling up was just like a kiss and declaring themselves to each other, which was fine. And like, everything about the romance was like fine, but I was never swooning. I was never like, wow, I ship this so hard. They're perfect for each other. It was just like, oh, they're together already? Already? Really? We're already getting the first kiss at 40% in? Oh, okay, I guess. And this book, the marketing for this has the audacity to advertise it being slow burn, and I'm like, no. This book has none of those slow burn feelings. I'm sorry, no. Just because your characters don't jump in bed with each other or get married by the end of the book doesn't make it slow burn. If you still have the first kiss at 40% and them getting together and then like, that's it. No. Now, for the romance's credit, this book did something really clever that I've never quite seen before, which was this book explored both of our protagonists' emotional relationship hang-ups through their exes. Both of them have prominent exes that come into the story or are felt in this story. And through the lens of their exes and all of the problems that those relationships had, we can kind of explore those problems without actually having them between our main couple in an annoying miscommunication kind of way, you know? So I just thought that was so clever. Like, for example, our heroine broke things off with her ex because he wanted to move out to the big city, but she is so dedicated to this terraforming project that she's not leaving it. And then that becomes a major part of her character through the rest of the book. We also see through that she's kind of afraid to branch out and go into the big city life, which she eventually has to as part of being a professional athlete here, and her wrestling with that. Now, does this become a big problem? No, but it is a little hiccup, and I do like the way that it was brought in. It's interesting. We also see between Foster and his ex, who was a racer in the games, and they fell apart, he feels, because he didn't do his best to protect her as his partner. I mean, we as the reader can see we did his best, but he feels like he didn't do enough, and then that bleeds in to him being overprotective of now his new partner and romantic love interest. So I felt like this book was smart and well written, but the romance was lacking a little bit of romantic tension, you know? Overall, I'm going to give Into the Churn 4 stars, and I do think I'm going to pick up the sequel. So alas, the 5th book for this video is not the 5-star. Here right now is our 5-star distribution, and let's hope we have better luck with book number 6, shall we? So let's take a step back from the mental breakdown that past Chloe is having. Hello, I am future Chloe. I have now finished this video. The end is in sight. Don't worry, this video will end with a 5-star. It's coming. And I know that, like, you know that this video is gonna end in a 5-star, but like past Chloe that you're watching, for a while there, she was doubting it pretty hardcore. So I wish I could tell past Chloe that it'll be all right and the video will end eventually. So this is our intermission, and we're going to be taking a deep dive into the stats of Sci-fromance. Not that deep because we've only got a few minutes. Gotta get back to the regularly scheduled programming. But let's cover some interesting ones here, shall we? Before I started reading books for this video, my average star rating for Sci-fromance books was a 3.81. This is well above my average, which is more around a 3.3, 3.4, is my typical average star rating for all of the books I read. So Sci-fromance being a 3.8, significantly higher. That's looking at my reading over about the last 3 years to make those stats. 1 in every 3 Sci-fromances were 5 stars. Really good stats. This made it my favorite genre by the numbers. So now, after reading all of the books I ended up reading for this video, how are those stats doing? Not as well. We are now down to an average star rating for all the Sci-fromance books I've read over the past 3 years of 3.74. On average, 1 in 4 of the Sci-fromance books I've read are 5 stars, so it's dropped. But like, honestly, I expected it to drop way more. And here's the graph of all of my Sci-fromance before this video. And then here's the graph of all of the Sci-fromance I've read in the past years, including the Sci-fromance from this video. So as you can see, we added in some more 2 stars, 3 stars, a lot of 4 stars, and only 1 5-star, which you'll still get at the end of this video. By the averages for the past few years, Sci-fromance is still my favorite genre, and when I saw those stats, I was floored. I said, no way, there has to be a mistake, but I went into all the numbers and I don't think there's any errors there. And I think a lot of that was the feeling of, as I was making this video, I was getting more and more jaded and burned out on Sci-fromances. And I don't think that's necessarily because I was reading a lot of them, because I did spread this video out over many months. I've been making this video since February, so it's taken quite a while to get around here, and I wasn't like binging a bunch of Sci-fromance books all back to back. Say hi to the Chloe from the beginning of this video who's wearing sweaters. It is definitely no longer sweater weather here. But by the end of making this video, I'm feeling very meh about Sci-fromance. Like, in my heart, I'm like, ugh, I don't like this genre anymore. But like, by the numbers, it's still one of my most successful genres. And even just taking into account the Sci-fromance that I've read this year in 2024, it doesn't quite rank top in my genres, but it's a very close second. Even after all of those bad Sci-fromance books I read in this very video, it's still my second highest genre of the year. So like, the problem isn't the books that I'm picking up, because obviously I'm enjoying them. I think the problem is making this video. Because normally, when I pick up a book and I give it 3 stars, it means I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And like, yeah, that's not a huge success, just liking a book, but it isn't a failure either. And when I get a 4-star book, I love those books. I celebrate those books. Yeah, it's not a 5-star favorite, but it's a good book that I loved. But then for this video, the 3 stars and the 4 stars felt like failures, because the goal was 5. And anything lower than 5 was failure, and then it just got so discouraging along the way. Even though lots of the books I was picking up were ones that I legitimately loved, but even that loving was tainted by the feeling of, ugh, but I have to keep making the video, but it's not done yet, but I haven't found the 5-star yet. Why haven't I found the 5-star yet? I don't think I'm gonna make another one of these reading until I find a 5-star for a little while. I think I need to take a step back and find my love for this genre again. They are very fun videos to watch. Right? I love the challenge, I love the deadline of it, I love watching these reading until I find a 5-star videos. But making them can be kind of discouraging, and I think I'm done with it for now. I need to capture the joy of reading, and there's so many video projects that help me do that. I've got so many in the works right now that I'm so excited about, but this video concept it's harder to find the joy. And let me level with you with another behind the scenes 𝐂𝐸 tidbit. So here is all of my reading so far this year. The x-axis here is the timeline through the year, and the y-axis is the star rating of the books. So as you can see, we got our 1 stars, 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, and 5 stars. And you can see on the right there, I've been in the middle of a 5-star drought for like 2 months now. It was 40 books, 40, between my previous 5-star and the 5-star I get at the end of this video. 40 books. And usually in that range, I would have like 5, 6 5-stars just occurring naturally, and I was really feeling the drought of that at the same time that I was getting discouraged about this video. So definitely tune in to some of my more exciting and fun and joyful video projects, like trying to find a new favorite author, which I'm in the middle of filming right now and enjoying the process of that. What else do I got coming up? And I'm crafting a new book tag, which I'm very excited to do, which is partially based off of the intimidating TBR and the anti-TBR tags. So let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming of this video does not end until I get a 5-star Sci-fromance. What number are we on now? Book number 6 of this video doesn't end until I find a 5-star Sci-fromance is Gemina. This is the sequel to Illuminae, read a few books ago. I decided to proceed with the series hoping that it would get better and also more romancy. It did get more romancy in this book, Gemina. But also, it didn't work for me. I didn't like this one as much as Illuminae, and I think getting into it, it's difficult to talk about the plot of this one because it's following on the heels of Illuminae. So the basics of the plot of this one is that we are following 2 teens, a girl and a boy, who are on this space station around a wormhole. Their plot intersects with the plot of the Illuminae characters, but it is its own story. Some evil people come onto the space station to try to take it over, and these 2 teens, our protagonists, become the resistance against them. And the entire book is told through this found footage multimedia of texts and messages and reports. If I had read Gemina before Illuminae, I could have loved it even more than Illuminae. But it's the fact that I read this after, right on the heels of Illuminae, that makes it fail. And the reason for that is that it follows basically the same plot structure and beats as book 1. We have different characters that are in a different situation, but the mood, the stakes, the banter, everything feels the same, to the point where in Illuminae, when plot twists really got me and things really creeped me out and I was on the edge of my seat and I really enjoyed a lot of those elements, here in Gemina, it felt stale. It felt like it was plagiarizing itself because it feels like you took the exact skeleton of book 1 and just put a new skin on it. And I do think that the romance in this book is slightly stronger than book 1, where it does spend more time developing the relationship between these characters. It has them really working together hand in hand, and you get to see the chemistry build over the book. I still had issues with the romance because our male lead was so annoying. He was just like vulgar and disrespectful and cocky, and like, I get it. These are the kind of heroes that J. Kristoff likes to write. I've seen it in his other books too, but like, come on, can we get someone else? Any other archetype, please. If you want to read either of these books, I would honestly recommend going into Gemina first. But in the end, Gemina was fine. I liked most of my time with it, but I couldn't love it like I loved some parts of Illuminae. And I'm going to give Gemina 3 stars, and I don't think I'm going to be continuing on in the series, though I am willing to be convinced otherwise. Sound off in the comments if you have strong opinions there. So that puts our star rating distribution like this. As you can see, very even. I'm really hoping that we're going to get a 5-star here soon. We'll see. So we are here at book 7 of the video, and when the statistics at the beginning said that it should take about 3 books, getting to book 7 feels like a little bit of a letdown and a failure. We are at over twice of what theoretically this should take, but this is also how many books it took when I did this video the first time. But anyway, I'm feeling a little desperate at this point, like I want to find a sci-fromance that I love. That is the whole goal of this, because I genuinely love sci-fromance books. I just haven't found one like that yet. I'm pulling out all the stops because I chose for book 7, Winter's Orbit. And the reason for that is that I was thinking, this is our 5-star because it takes place in the same universe by the same author as another 5-star sci-fromance, which was Ocean's Echo. I loved that book to pieces so much, so good. So then here in my moment of desperation, I thought, let's pick up the other one by that author. Obviously this one also going to be 5 stars, right? So let's talk about it. This book is very space opera, where we are following 2 people who are in an arranged marriage. They're both part of the political structure of their planets, and this marriage is part of a treaty between the 2 planets. One of our guys here, he didn't really ever expect to have to do a political marriage. He's not too excited about it. He's not too into doing his duty here, but he's willing to go along. The other guy in this marriage is very into his duty, and he's gonna do it, even though he also doesn't want this marriage because, as you find out throughout the book, his last relationship, which was also a political marriage, was fairly abusive. And he expects that this marriage is going to be more of the same, and he's just resigned to that. And I loved this book. I felt like it really juggled their relationship well, where at the beginning, they're both tiptoeing around each other, and then throughout the book, as they get to know each other better, you get to see this relationship develop. I really appreciated especially the character arc of healing we get for the character who came from an abusive relationship, where now that he's in a new situation, he slowly gets to come out of his shell and find better happiness. And that was very satisfying to watch. And I loved how this relationship between them acted as the scaffold that this character needed for doing that emotional healing that he needed to go through. But despite me loving this book, I don't think I can give it 5 stars, which hurts my heart. The other book in this series was better, and let me tell you some of the reasons. So I've already told you what I loved about this book. I would definitely recommend it for people looking for a good sci-fromance, but here are some of the things that I feel like are holding this book back a little bit. First is that I didn't quite fall in love with the characters. I appreciated them, they were fine, but like I didn't feel the connection to them that I want. One of the reasons for that is only one of our protagonists here has a character arc. We have the one character arc of healing, but the other character is just flat throughout the story and isn't even really emotionally challenged throughout the story. Like, yeah, he doesn't quite want to be in this marriage, but like, he's fine with it. And it doesn't even throw him that far outside of his comfort zone. So I would have loved also a character arc for other protagonists. I feel like that's pretty necessary for a character-focused story like this one is. Also, the conflict was pretty one note. That one note that was played over and over was, one of our characters doesn't want to emotionally connect in this relationship because he's worried about getting hurt. And the other one wants to emotionally connect in the relationship but doesn't quite realize how difficult it is for the other guy. And that was the conflict between them, and it was the same conflict in all of their scenes together. And it never evolved or changed or deepened past that. It was just that conflict until it was finally resolved. And I was really invested in and loving this conflict for like the first half of the book, but by the time we got to like 80% and this was still the conflict, I was getting pretty bored. So, love the writing, love the world building. We'll definitely pick up everything this author writes from here on out, but it was 4 stars. Which is typically a good rating, but here when we are 7 books into this video doesn't end until I get a 5-star Sci-fromance, it feels like a disappointment. So here is our star rating distribution so far. I do love that we have another 4-star. I feel like we're trending in the right direction, and let's see what we get next. The 8th Sci-fromance book that I read was Only Bad Options. This is actually one of my official 5-star predictions. I made a video with 10 of those. You can go watch it. And mostly I was so excited for this one because not only is it Sci-fromance, it also has a few other tropes that I've loved before. Our heroine is an engineer for a company that makes like starships and weapons, and she's really good at her job, and she finds a defect in one of the starships and she tries to report it, but everything keeps getting covered up and things escalate, and she won't shut up about this safety hazard on the ships, and the company starts trying to kill her because of it. And that throws her into the orbit of our hero of this book, and he is an assassin warrior for the Empire. And first off, I felt like both of our characters here were developed so well, where over the course of the book you get to understand more about their traumatic backstories and how it influences their emotional hang-ups in the present. You get to see them being amazingly competent, her at engineering, him at being an assassin, and that's just like so satisfying to watch. And also you get to see them admiring each other's competence, and that's also a very fun romance bit for me. And then as they start working together, they discover that they are fated mates. And this psychic bond starts forming between them, but because of their both dramatic backstories, they're kind of resistant to this idea of a psychic bond that is forced upon them by the universe. And that leads to even more sticky tension in their relationship where they're trying to work together on this plot. And also they're trying to resist their psychic bond, but also they're starting to kind of flirt with each other. And that tension, the back and forth, that is why I love the fated mates trope. I love it when people are trying to resist it because then it provides extra conflict in the relationship. I also want to praise how this book is so slow burn. Like, it draws out this conflict and develops it to its fullest extent of the will they, won't they, and I love that. I think for me, that is the core of what I love in romance, is the slow burn conflict tension between them. I am so invested in this couple. I'm invested in the larger life and death plot in this book. I am so excited to continue the series. And I'm gonna give this book 4 stars. No 5 stars yet. I wish so dearly that I could lie to myself and give this 5 stars, and maybe if I even gave half stars, I would give it 4.5, but no, it's 4 stars. And I think the crux of that, of why it didn't quite get 5 stars to me, is 2 reasons. One, it didn't quite feel resolved in the end. It felt very much like I was reading a part 1 to the story and I'll have to read the sequel for part 2. And I am gonna read the sequel because I'm invested. I love it. But that does, dock a little bit of points in my book. I really love a strong ending to a story, and I didn't feel like this one quite had a strong ending. Like a satisfying ending, yeah, okay. Like, I'm not mad at it. I'm just not happy about it. And I think the other reason why this book just doesn't quite get 5 stars is honestly like the writing. The writing style, I don't have any big problems with it, but it didn't knock my socks off. I didn't feel like it really gave much of a tone or a vibe to the world. I had trouble picturing a lot of the sets. The exposition was a little too heavy for me, like it didn't quite trust its reader. Like, it would give the sentence like, some people have psychic powers. And then it would give a sentence like, I'm jealous of these scions. And then it would give a sentence like, scions are people with psychic powers. I'm like, okay, we didn't need the last sentence. Like, I got it from context. And it just had a lot of those little examples, which was excessively reader-friendly writing, which I know a lot of people like, but I don't love. Here's our star rating distribution so far for the books. It's coming along. I already have my next Sci-fromance book picked out, so I'll check in with you when I've finished it. The 9th Sci-fromance of the video was Silent Blade. I was very excited to pick this one up. It is from an author that I've given 5 stars to before, Ilona Andrews. They write a lot of urban fantasy with lots of romance in it, and they've got a few sci-fi novellas. I read one of them before and I gave it 4 stars. Anyway, so we are following a very fun couple. The heroine is a assassin. See, she has control over like these magic plasma blades, super good at killing people. Her target is the hero. So it's very much enemies to lovers. She is literally trying to kill him. There's also a catch where they have a history where when they were teenagers, they had an arranged marriage, which he broke off, which hurt her feelings, and she's been carrying that hurt inside of her all of this time, and now she finally gets to let it out and murder him. But in order to get close to him, she needs to make him fall in love with her. He doesn't recognize her from when they were teens, and she's slowly seducing him, moving in with him, and they are actually falling in love. And then the romance happens from there, of course. This book is definitely more romance than sci-fi, but has some fun sci-fi elements, and okay, it's 3 stars. It's 3 stars. And like, this author, I've given some of their books 5 stars, right? There's that potential. But like, I've given more of their books 3 stars. Here's the star rating distribution. And I feel like a big reason for that is I just don't love the personality that they give to like almost all of the heroes. Because it happens in this book, it happens in so many of their other books, where the hero is like, you are mine, whether you like it or not, because I am so obsessed with you. That's just never gonna be romantic for me. That's just always going to be red flag, no. And I understand intellectually the appeal of having the hero be so obsessed with the heroine that like he can't bear to even consider not having her be his, and so it's all this possession of it. But like, it's a deal breaker for me. I don't think a book like that's ever going to get a 5 stars for me. And to be clear, the books by this author, though the hero will often threaten, like, you're mine whether you like it or not, the hero behavior is usually much more respectful than his language and doesn't actually force the heroine into anything. So, like, at least there's that, but still, like, it's so hard for me to ship these romances when the guy is just such a possessive jerk, you know? So this is not the 5-star Sci-fromance, and I guess we're off to book 10. 10? Ugh! Honestly, I'm getting kind of impatient with this video. I wish we could have found a 5-star by now. Both because the video is getting pretty long and because I haven't had a 5-star book of any genre in a while. Like, I just counted it. It has been 29 books since my last 5-star. And like, that's too many by my normal numbers of just normal 5-star drop rates. There should have been about 4 and it's been 0. And I just need a book to love. You know, I need a book to love. I want it to be a sci-fromance. I want to love it. I want to have so much fun with it. And it's just not coming. But I'm going to persevere in this video. You know how long this video is. At this point, I don't. So we'll see how long this long haul is going to be. I'm a big fan of this style of cooking, which is like the first few times I try a new thing or use a new ingredient, I follow a recipe. And then once I feel like I've gotten the tropes of the cooking genre, I like to freestyle with it. So this is combining a bunch of different recipes that I've been trying out over the last few months. This is now creamy, cheesy, sausage, pasta orzo, spinach, something.
Barbecue.
Barbecue! It's barbecue flavored. And I'm very excited to try this. I'm also excited to share it with Seth.
The recipes are always really good, so let's see how it turns out.
I mean, not always. Sometimes I do slip up, but you know, I do use recipes I've tried before and have worked well as bases. So that's really, really good. I'm trying to think if I would do anything different, but I think the flavor profile is perfect.
It's really good.
Cool. Well, while we're eating this, it's time for me to review for you like a bajillion more sci-fromance novels. And you might think like, Chloe's being so lazy, she hasn't checked in with us and she read like 3 more novels. No, I read these 3 novels in like 3 days because, well, for the first 10 books of this video, I was just reading Sci-fromance as I felt like it. And I was like, we're just gonna get the 5-star when we get the 5-star. I am impatient now. We're on book whatever. I don't even remember what number we're on. We're on this number at this point. And so I'm just binging Sci-fromance at this point until I get a 5-star. So I'm here to talk to you about 3 books. So first I read Into the Fire. This is a sequel of a book I read earlier, Into the Churn. Definitely less romance than the first book in the series because the first book was them getting together as a couple, and then by here in the second book it's just them kind of solidifying their relationship with each other as they go on a new sci-fi adventure. I felt like both the sci-fi adventure and the relationship drama were slightly lower quality than the first book. Gave the first book 4 stars. I'm giving this one 3 stars. I definitely liked it. I think I would be interested in other books by this author, and I've put some on my want to read already, but I'm not super interested in continuing on in this series if there's another book. Maybe if it had a really intriguing premise or was following different characters, I could go for a different in-universe couple. The book was really well paced, but just the character relationships didn't really tug on my heartstrings. I felt like they really explored most of what they needed to with the characters already in book 1, and there wasn't a lot left to go in book 2. So it was fine if you're going in for the action and adventure. It was great, but for the relationship building, the character arcs, meh. I then read See You Yesterday, set in normal world, but with a little bit of a sci-fi twist on it. So definitely more on the romance side of the scale than the sci-fi side of the scale. This is a time loop romance. So we have our girl, she's just gone into college at the University of Washington. She's super excited about it because she didn't have a good time in high school. She's trying to reinvent herself. And then turns out her roommate is her nemesis from high school. Various enemies she had from high school also attending the college that she keeps running into. She totally fails the job interview that she's trying to do. Anyway, so her life is in shambles again. And then she gets stuck in a time loop on this terrible day. And then the catch is there's another person in the time loop who is a really fun, cute physics nerd guy. And then they team up to try to get out of the time loop and all along the way bond. It's a romance. I really loved the physics nerd element where they were really talking about physics. You know, even though our main character wasn't really into the physics nerd stuff, we got a lot of physics technobabble from our main character. They talked with physics professors of like, what do you think theoretically if someone was in a time loop? You know,
that's a fun dynamic.
Yeah, it was a very fun dynamic. But in the end, I was really dissatisfied as someone who is a physics nerd because it very much felt like the author is not actually a physics nerd. A lot of the technobabble, like, it was close, but then, like, for example, one of their theories about how to get out of this time loop is they need to, like, increase gravity. Right, they need to be where more gravity is. And their solution to this is like they usually hang out like on the 8th floor of a building, and then they're like, okay, let's go down to the basement, near to the center of the earth for the gravity increase. Yeah, that's true. There is a gravity increase if you go down, right? But I calculated this gravity increase, okay?
I remember this rant.
I ranted to him quite a bit. I calculated this gravity increase, and it's like the same gravity increase that if you had stood next to a vending machine. Like, the gravity from the vending machine pulling you to it is the same as how far they moved down. And like, even, like, they go on various road trips in this book to different locations. Like, I calculated it, like, they go on a road trip to Vancouver. And like, just the gravity increase from going from Seattle to Vancouver, a different part of the world, is already like 10 times more gravity increase than they try in this moment. And like, they could have just stood next to a bunch of vending machines, you know? And like, it's just those little details of like, they're trying to do physics. And then like, if you actually calculate it out, it makes no sense. And I know, it's a time loop romance. I'm not supposed to be overthinking it like this, but it did bother me quite a bit. So I definitely love the romance part more than the sci-fi part. I did like the sci-fi part, but I didn't love it because there was lots of parts. I liked that it was there. I didn't like that it was there.
It makes sense.
The actual romance part, definitely I loved it a lot more in the second half of the book than the first. Our main character starts out as very abrasive, confrontational, very unlikable, and like that made it really hard to root for the romance at the beginning because I didn't love the main character. But she grew, she got character arc, she warmed up, and then it was much funner. In the end, I'm giving See You Yesterday 4 stars. And then I read what was the title of the one I read? I finished it yesterday. It's all a blur. Then I read Only Good Enemies. This is the sequel to Only Bad Options, which I also read earlier in the video. The difference is than the other sequel, first, second pair, for like Into the Churn and Into the Fire. Into the Churn had a full romance arc. And then Into the Fire was just like, now they're a couple, let's go on a new adventure. Only Bad Options and Only Good Enemies, the romance arc is over all 2 books. So just at the end of book 1, Seth hasn't heard a rant on this one yet.
Nope.
So just at the end of book 1, you were left unsatisfied because they weren't yet, you know, the romance had not yet concluded. I felt like book 1, stronger than book 2. Book 1, there was so much yearning and tension. This is like a fated mates kind of trope where they have this magic-ish, sci-fi-ish bond with each other where they have like kind of a telepathic connection. And then for book 1, they're really trying to reject this. And that tension of being drawn to each other and then being like, nope, I don't want this telepathic connection with a random stranger who was trying to kill me last scene. So good. I loved it. And then in this book 2, obviously they go from that to a couple at the end. I don't think that's a spoiler that they end up a couple at the end of a romance novel duet. But I do feel like a lot of the tension was lacking. I felt like the action plot was also lacking. It was kind of like they had set up this big bad, threatening guy to be our villain. And in book 1, he was super threatening. And then in like book 2, I feel like they overcame him so easily that by the end it was like, that was it. The guy isn't even scary anymore, you know? Like they nerfed him so much that overcoming him in the end didn't feel like a success. So I think I'm still gonna give it 4 stars. Gave book 1 4 stars, giving book 2 4 stars, but it's definitely a higher 4 and a lower 4.
So the hunt continues.
So the hunt for a 5-star sci-fromance continues. I have plans. I have 2 books up on the docket. Gonna start the other one, and one of them is gonna be 5-star. Like, that might sound kind of delusional of me, but you'll see. I have a master plan. We're gonna end this video very soon. I don't remember what number of books we're at right now. I think it might be 12. We're not gonna get to 15. I'm gonna get a 5-star. You'll see.
I've heard this master plan.
So, yeah, let's see what books I read next, and hopefully I don't have to resort to my nuclear option master plan to get my 5-star. Book number 13 was Full Speed to a Crash Landing. I've been quite interested in this author for a while. I've been looking into her books because she's written quite a few sci-romances, and a lot of them looked up my alley, including a Han and Leia Star Wars sci-romance, which I would be very interested in, except for the fact that I don't really care about that couple in Star Wars. But the idea of a Star Wars sci-romance I'm very into. Anyway, so I was very excited to snag a copy of Full Speed to a Crash Landing and start this. My first mistake was picking up the audiobook, because the audiobook is maybe the worst audiobook I've ever listened to. And like, I could see these audiobook narrators being good in other projects, they so didn't fit this project, and the way that they took the characters was so terrible. Because our protagonist, our heroine, she's already very snarky, quip, 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 all the time, every day, and they're not like all that clever, they're somewhat entertaining. But then the audiobook narrator made it like so over the top and cartoony, and like, it just made it get on my nerves even more. Like, our heroine's voice in the novel was already obnoxious, and then this audiobook performance brought her to truly insufferable. I also didn't love how kind of this entire book is constructed around a twist, and I saw the twist coming from like page 3. And so the twist was not worth the payoff, and the entirety of the book was obnoxious. And you know what? I didn't like the romance. Okay, and then we had another audiobook narrator where we had a few chapters from the hero's perspective, and that had different problems, and like, I hated this audiobook so much. So the hero's chapters are in the format of a report, where he's reporting on the events of the book to some superior in the bureaucracy. And he has a lot of footnotes that are, of course, like, funny, snarky, but obnoxious. But then the audiobook narrator, whenever they would get to the footnote, he would say, footnote, and then say the footnote, and just like the word footnote coming in every few words, and like, I hated it. Like, I have listened to so many audiobooks that do footnotes so well, that weave them into the story, that have the audiobook narrator have a little bit of, okay, this is an aside kind of tone of voice. Like, it is possible to do footnotes so well in an audiobook, and this is the worst I've ever heard them. Anyway. Oh, and I have another complaint about this book that is completely separate from the audiobook. Okay, we're tabling that discussion. Now let's talk about the actual novel. So like, the technobabble here is like the worst I've ever seen in a sci-fi book. I do not care if your sci-fi science is 100% real science. Like, I think sci-fi is a place to explore new, interesting ideas and really get it out there, right? But then like, the entire purpose of science fiction is to kind of like build on at least some science. Your science fiction science at least shouldn't like fundamentally contradict real science. This book straight up has our character confidently declare that if you're towing around spaceships in space, it doesn't matter how big they are because there's no gravity. Okay, tabling the discussion on the existence of gravity in space. Obviously there is gravity, right? But it's negligible in lots of situations. But like, in order to tow a thing, you need to accelerate the thing. In order to accelerate a thing, you need a force, like, it's proportional to the object's mass. So actually, it fundamentally matters how big a thing is, how well you can tow it around. This is just like such a simple concept, and then like, the author just throws it out because there's no air resistance or gravity in space. And I'm like, okay, got it. And the physics nerd in my heart shriveled and died in that moment and became a crystallized ember of hatred towards this book. So from all of that rant, you might think that I'm gonna give this book 1 star, and I'm like this close. I was clicking the button on Goodreads for 1 star, and then I decided to have mercy, because this book does have some redeeming qualities. I think it has particularly, there's an interesting discussion in here about kind of like archaeology over time, and the idea of both like encountering alien ruins in the future and having aliens encounter our ruins in the future. And like what we're doing now, how that will be perceived by future archaeologists. And like that little paragraph discussion, I was interested. And also, I reserve 1 stars for books that I would like never recommend to anyone, and I feel like I could still find this book's audience, and it's reaching its target audience, and like, people are giving it 5 stars, so like, obviously they exist out there. I don't understand them, but they exist. Like, if you're looking for a super snarky heroine, always has a quip at the ready, not super hardcore sci-fi plot, like you don't care at all about that, then like, yeah, this could work. It's short, it's fast-paced, there's lots of interesting things happening. There are very few redeeming qualities, but they exist. Anyway, so 2 stars for Full Speed to a Crash Landing. So after that disaster, I decided it was time to pull in the backup plan, the option to end all options. We are getting a 5-star here with number 14. Number 14 is Komar. So this is like one of the later books in the very long 𝐂𝐸𝐻𝐻𝐿 saga series, which is one of my favorite series of all time, and this is a reread. That is my final straw option. I am so done with making this video, is let's just reread one of my favorite Sci-fromances. So I did, and I love this book so much. This is such a good book. Let me tell you about how great it is, okay? So one of the things that makes it great is that it's kind of at the tail end of a series and we've had so much foundation, so I'm just gonna give you the very Cliff Notes, spoiler-free version of that. Our main character through most of the books of this series is a guy named Miles, and he is very gung-ho about a lot of things, and he's not always the best at actually succeeding at his goals. One of his goals throughout the entire series has been to find his life partner. He both wants someone to love and love him back, and he needs a wife because he's got this political dynasty to continue. He's like a lord on his home planet, right? So he needs both someone who loves him and he loves, and someone who's willing to take on the political duty of becoming a lady of their political empire. So it's quite a tall ask, and throughout the books, he's had many romances and they've all ended up failing in different interesting ways until we get here. And here is where his final love interest is introduced. And from that description, you would expect that like she would play a side character role in this story, where it'd be from his perspective and like she's the love interest. And yeah, she can have some depth, but not a lot. But no, this book is a masterpiece. And this book, she is more of the main character than he is. She gets her whole journey, and it's so awesome and beautiful. And like, I love how, because I have the context of who he is, our hero, that I can look at the heroine and say, you know, they would be a really good couple and have the joy of shipping them, but also this author helping me so skillfully root for a heroine so that like I can see that maybe it won't be the best for her to get in a romantic relationship at the beginning, and so I don't ship it. And just like that little conflict of like, I want them to be together, but also when we start out, our heroine is in a marriage. She has a husband who is neglectful, who is emotionally abusive, and she really wants to leave him. But then her internal sense of like morality and loyalty is like, but he could be worse. We have a kid together. I want to stay with him to support the kid. It'll be fine. I'm sure things will get better. And then throughout the book is her journey of sticking up for herself, of claiming her independence. And I love how carefully this book balances giving our heroine her independence that she claims for herself, and then also making it totally okay and totally root that this is going to end in a romance with a different guy. where she is so strong and grabbing her independence so fiercely that she is not going to let it go until she is ready. It is the right thing for them to both be in a relationship together that will then build both of their strengths together. Like, it's just like, those are the kind of romances that I love, the ones where the characters genuinely support each other and the love goes farther than just like random lust, and they do have a little bit of admiring each other in that way too. Their love is so much deeper than that, where they're so right for each other on a personality level too, and them being romantic partners supports both of them and helps both of them lead more powerful lives. Like, yes. So that's the romance part. The sci-fi part is so well done too. Like, yes. In contrast to the last book I read, this book has some of the best technobabble I've ever found in sci-fi. Like, this book is dealing a lot with like wormholes and terraforming and all of these different sci-fi ideas that are pretty out there and have barely any scientific basis, except the book also has several characters that are like hardcore engineers that talk like engineers and have interesting discussions about the things that like fully feel like the science is internally consistent, and just like that feeling of people solving technical problems in realistically technical ways in a way that also doesn't get too technically advanced for the people who don't care about that stuff or don't want to read it or are bored by it. Like, it's the perfect balance in this book of giving you enough to understand the problem and get invested in it, but not so much that it becomes boring. This book is a Sci-fromance masterpiece. I love it to pieces. 5 stars. I'm so glad I reread it because I had so much fun reading this book. And those are the 14 Sci-fromance books I read until I got a 5-star. Here's our final star rating distribution for all of them. So like, not too bad. A lot of 4 stars and 3 stars, which are both fine books, which I like. It's just the process of making this video sometimes felt like I was getting a lot more failures than I actually was, because the bar for success was 5 stars. But we got here in the end, didn't we? If you have any Sci-fromance recommendations for me, definitely drop them in the comments, and I highly recommend watching this video of mine next where I'm reading Sci-fromance until I get a 5-star.